We've come to a great point to kick things off. I'm just going to say a few very brief words at the start. Firstly, I'm very pleased to meet everyone. I'm Professor Tom Williamson, Professor of Small Business here at ARU Peterborough. Delighted to be welcoming, particularly those of you joining us in person here on campus, but also those of us watching the live stream online. A few housekeeping points, if I may, just for those that are first-timers on campus. We're not expecting any fire alarms today, but if you do hear one, please make your way down the stairs. We've also got emergency exits left and right as you come out the doors, and we'll muster out in the open space just by the front of the building. If you need to use toilets or facilities at any point during the event today, again, out of the door, turn left or turn right and you'll find facilities. Turn right, we're upstairs, and you'll find those facilities there. And if you need any other assistance, please make yourself known to myself or my colleague Vanessa at the back, and we'll make sure that you get the support you need. In terms of today's event, I'll introduce our speaker in just a moment's time. Our running order is 40-45 minutes or so, and then we will have plenty of time at the end if you wish to ask us questions, including those of you watching on the live stream. You can put questions in the chat and we'll try and address those in the room. So please bear that in mind, or I'll start picking on people to ask questions, or I'll ask some tricky ones myself. But with no further ado, I'm delighted to hand over the stage to Dr Scott Steele, who's going to introduce today's lecture topic. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you very much, Tom. So yes, I'm just going to wheel around here like a crazy space person. So please ask any questions at the end, but do ask loads of questions. So today we're going to be looking at space sustainability and the future of space law. This is not a novel area. And many people think, well, space law, has it been around? Space law, the functionality of it itself, comes around from around about 60 to 70 years ago now. And it's developed over time in a various different way through international law. And this is one thing that generally universities don't teach in depth because there's not a lot of specialisms. But space law is unique. It is developing, it is constant. And from everything we do in modern day society, we deal with space. Whether that's going to Asda, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Lidl, Aldi, whether that's using your sat-nav, whether that's going on your phone, Spotify, Sky TV, everything that we do in day-to-day society, apart from going to the library, is to do with space. But then if you go to the library, what do? You log online, you see if there's a book there, you go, you pick up a book. You're using space. Uber Eats, you're using space. Everything we do has a function in outer space. And yet we don't know it. We don't understand what the laws are in space. We don't understand what the developments are in space. And it's constant. GPS, military applications in outer space. TV, outer space. Everything along. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look into what kind of laws are in space and why are they important. And they are there. We just don't look at them. We'll be looking at the sustainability issues. We'll be comparing them to different elements within planet Earth. We'll be trying to make them judgments and understandings and to see what we can consider into space, because we can't go out there. I can't go out there without a helmet or a lot of money. But how can we understand what we have on Earth, and how can we transcend that up to sort of one of them environments? So as you can see, we will address international law. We'll look at the rules when it comes to international space law. We'll have a consideration about exploration. And if anything, we will mention Musk. I will try not to delve too much into it. Let's not say too much about Elon Musk. But we'll have a look around about space exploration. What we do, why we do it, what are the benefits. We'll look at the Outer Space Treaty, and this is the only treaty that we're going to be considering. We will touch upon the other 5 treaties, but the Outer Space Treaty is the grandfather. It's the one that has started it all. It's the functioning one. It is the developing one. and it's the oldest one. What does the Outer Space Treaty mean? Is it relevant? Can a law that was hatched a part of the Cold War be relevant? Potentially. What about the modern challenges? Can it adapt? We all know, the lawyers in the room, the students in the room, we all know that laws very rarely adapt because they're reactive. We have a number of laws that change because of an issue. But there's no issues so far in space. There's nothing that causes litigation. There's no public outcry. How many times have we heard in Parliament, there's an issue and we need to change something in space? Very rare. So we'll have a consideration about that. And we'll look at the sustainable actions. We'll consider what kind of sustainability in space. I mean, it has no oxygen. So if it has no oxygen, who cares about the environment? It's not like it's opposed to climate change. And as we know from planet Earth, we can't even deal with climate change. So what's the hope of trying to consider something in outer space? What about litter? Do the astronauts go outside and chuck their Mars bars wrappers, the Costa cups? We'll consider all these points in turn. So the Outer Space Treaty is established in 1967. It is the grandfather, it is the oldest. And this is where everything came from. This was the birth of outer space. This was the development. And as I've said, this was a formation from the Cold War. All of the states in the international project decided that it was too risky to have war in space. They were petrified about a nuclear bomb in space. Because what could a nuclear bomb do? Well, it could destroy the ozone layer, as more as that. What about the satellites up there? Can you imagine modern society now without satellite connection? No phones, no Facebook, no Instagram, no X, no Wi-Fi, nothing. We will be lost. I always have my phone on you. Everyone around has their phones. We have laptops. We have cars. I still can't find my way home from work, and I've been here 18 months. So these connections were all thought about way back in 1967. The goals were to promote peaceful exploration. It was about how can we utilize space. Now, the Outer Space Treaty is not politically correct, as in to a UK 2025 standard. So when reading it, you will say it's mankind. It's not humanity, it's not womankind. So forgive me for that already. But when we're generally addressing it, I'll say humanity, but the key words are mankind. So the promotion of the peaceful exploration was for the benefit of all humanity, all mankind. But here's a question. If it's for the benefit of all mankind and everyone in this room and online, how many times have you been to space? Could you go to space? We've seen all of this in the papers and we've seen this on the news. The rich can go to space. To get to space, it takes around about $250,000. You can go in Blue Origin, you can go on SpaceX, you can pay the billionaires to take you up. I don't have $250,000. And if I did, to go to space for that hour, I don't really think that's cost effective. But we do get that benefit. We get the satellites. We pay for all of that. We use the services. And even more, we've seen in the legal war in Ukraine, we've seen Starlink go over to Ukraine and provide that connection so that they could contact, they could use that. And that's very different. The points of guidance when it comes to exploration has changed. The OST hasn't. The Outer Space Treaty just hasn't changed. It hasn't kept up. But it had development elements within the Outer Space Treaty. the focus was originally on the moon. So when Neil Armstrong jumped off and said this is the first step, etc., 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 that was the exploration phase. America was the first. They wanted it. And then it kind of all went quiet because we went through a global recession, and it cost a lot of money to send that pod to the moon. And what for? Some rocks. We went to space and we brought back rocks. That was it. It had no scientific elements to it. It had no tardigrades, which are organisms that can live out in space. It had nothing. We had moon rocks. Excellent. Billions of pounds for rocks. And that was it. But America wanted to be the first. The development elements now of space exploration, as we can see, and we've seen this over the last 10, 20 years, are the rovers. We have multiple rovers up on Mars. We have multiple satellites going through the Milky Way. And we're generally seeing what's out there. We have the Hubble telescope taking the pictures and seeing what's beyond our reach. Because technologically, we just can't get there yet. But the sustainability elements are there. What happens to the rover up in Mars when it's dead? It's dead. It's finished. What about when we have a defunct satellite that NASA or the European Space Agency or JAXA or any other space agency just says, just crash it into the local moon. It's fine. It's junk. Is it classified as junk? No, but we'll get on that in a few slides. But this is all about the sustainability aspects and how we keep that pristine area. We've not stepped up in space apart from astronauts. We haven't got our Costa Cups up space. There's a car up in space, but we'll forget about that for the moment. But this is all the aspects of the sustainability element and how we develop that and how we keep that area pristine. Because one day, I'd like to think, we will be living in space. We will have colonized Mars. We will have colonized the moon. We will be living in spaceships because we can't address climate change here. And unfortunately, none of us can breathe underwater. So why not? We have all of these different shows, whether it's Star Trek or Star Wars, or even The Expanse. Stuff like this to excel into how we get up there and how we live. So the emerging issues that we currently have, and we can see this with the likes of SpaceX and commercialization of space, are the commercial space flights. Them $250,000 for 20 minutes up in space. Woohoo! I don't want to spend $250,000 in space, not for 20 minutes. I want to live up there for a week. I want to play with rocks. It's weird. I don't know. I want to go to space. Space tourism. And again, this is a new element. Billionaires and millionaires want to go up in space and pay their hard-earned money. We'll not speak about any more of that. But they want to go to space. They want to have that adventure. There's only a limited people. Bear in mind, it's for the benefit of all mankind, humanity. I can't go. It's not free. It's a bit displaced. The advancement of scientific missions, and we've got a lot of this. The likes of astrobiology has been developed for the biological aspects of space. And this is where they go to, they don't go, but they send rovers up to different planets, to moons, they make hypotheses, and they have a look. They look for life. They see where life came from. And this is not the little green men running around saying, nanu, nanu. You're too young, some of you will be to even understand that reference. But they understand these what Martians are. Are they Martians? Are they little grey men? Do they come and abduct us? No. We're looking for something called tardigrades. Little, tiny, biological creatures that you cannot see. But these are life. And if life is on a planet or on an asteroid, or on an icy moon, or somewhere that water, then how do we get here? And these key questions are continuously considered by astrobiologists every single day. I'll not bore you too much because it gets really complicated, but if you think of a tardigrade as a little caterpillar, that's what it looks like. And if you Google it, you will be grossed out. But it's fantastic. Do Google it after the event. The new challenges, and these are something that we're going to focus on now. Space debris especially. So space debris is littering. We have hundreds and hundreds of satellites out in space. They're just floating around. Has anyone watched Gravity with Sandra Bullock? What happens in that is Sandra Bullock's up in space with a number of brilliant actors, I should say. And one satellite hits another satellite, hits another satellite, hits another satellite, hits another satellite. And you have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of little pieces going around planet Earth like this, continuously. And it grows because they keep hitting each other. And because there's no gravity, you have millions and millions and millions of bullet-like objects going millions of miles an hour based on Earth's gravity, hitting everything continuously. So then there's no satellites because all the satellites have been destroyed. So space is big. It is. It's very big. But if you have 100 million bullets going around planet Earth at a rapid speed, how can you get back up? You can't. And that's something called the cascade effect. And that was first really talked about by Donald Kessler in the 80s, where he said, if we don't clean up our junk, we're going to be locked. I can't live without my phone, 100,000%. I can't find my way home reading a map. And this is the skills that we've just took for granted, we've understood. And this is one thing why space debris is so important. And we'll talk about that in a few slides. Space mining, it's a real key. So there has been hypothesis and work considered about asteroid mining, where there's metals, precious metals, a lot more than we have on planet Earth. But also what more? It's okay going up to space and mining some gold and diamond and potentially a rare earth metal or even a new metal that we could use. But what else? So again, colleagues have considered whether there's any helium-3. Now this, it's not the gas. This is potentially one of the most exciting concepts. A small piece of it is green unlimited energy. It could run a city block for a certain amount of time. But we have the difficulty of mining it. We've got to find it first. Colleagues have, a lot of colleagues have said that the moon is made of it. They want to go and mine the moon. They want to go and completely destroy the moon, get this resource and power planet Earth. Fantastic. 10 years of green energy. No fossil fuels, the ozone layer will recover, the seas will be fine, we'll have more fish and chickens and everything. But if we mine the moon, then the tides go. And frankly, I like looking at the moon on a night. It's peaceful, it's nice. And do we not get a say in that? For all humanity, why can't we have a say? We can't go and mine it ourselves, we can't go up with a pickaxe, we can't go up with a fork. Can't do it. Do you think we'll still be paying for energy? Of course we will. Because who goes up and mines it for free? Can you see the likes of America going up to space? Spending all of these billions and billions and billions of dollars to mine the moon, to bring it back to Earth, to refine it, to then put it out to the wider public of planet Earth and say, you have 10 years of free energy. Congratulations, humanity, we've done something. Of course not. They're going to charge you. But again, if I give you a Mars bar and you eat that Mars bar and then I charge you for that Mars bar, you've bought that. It doesn't quite work. And these are sort of the questions that we're looking into space. We've got to do something. We've got to spend the money. We've got to have them technological advances. It will benefit all of us on a day-to-day basis. But it's how do we sell something that is everyone's? Because if it's everyone's, what can we do? So the governance aspects of outer space, there is governance. It's more than just the US government or the UK government. We have COSPAR, first of all. And we'll touch upon COSPAR when we look at Article 9 of the Outer Space Treaty. So the Committee of Space Research looks at the scientific endeavours of outer space. It's not technically an agency. It's a self-governed form that presents a number of well-written papers and states to other states within the international community. We believe this is the best scientific endeavour you need to do. This is how you should look after space. This is what you should do, why you should do it. You should listen to us. But as an agency, as of such, some states go, no, too costly, go away please. And that's it. And that's the fun of international law. The United Nations Office of Outer Space provides that oversight. And it has a number of subcommittees through UNCOPUS, for the legal subcommittee and the normal subcommittee, to then try and develop law, to develop factions, to develop state practice, customary international law, guidance to space agency, guidance to states, and how we develop and continue. But as I've said, the law's reactive. We haven't had an issue that's been a litigation. UK lawyers love litigation because then we have case law, and then we have statute, and then we have judges making it. We haven't had anything. A few years ago, we had a satellite, a Russian satellite, Soviet Union satellite, crash in Canada. Went on the floor, blew up. Poof. Canadians went, you need to pay us to take this away. It's hurt our environment, it's crash landed, you need to give us reparations. And guess what the Russians did? Said, no, please go away, Canada, we're not going to. And then something happened. The Canadians got money. There was no litigation. There was no lawyers banging on the door saying, have you had a slip, trip or fall in the last 3 years? There was nothing. The satellite was removed. It was taken back to its host state. All the proprietary information, technology, was taken back to the host state. And Canada got money. They got financial compensation. Now, space lawyers at this point were going, no, take it to the International Court of Justice. Let's get an opinion. Let's get some kind of litigation on the book. We need more guidance. What do we do in this situation? What should we do? Who do we sue? Do we sue the state? Well, the OST says yes, but that's boring. Do we sue the owners? Do we sue the flight operators? Potentially. We have seen the rise of agencies, and it's not just NASA. The European Space Agency is incredibly strong. It is developed more, it is launching more, and bear in mind in the UK here, we've got 2 launching sites. You can go and watch satellites being launched into orbit. One's just down the country, one's in Scotland. And it's grown constantly. This is a big business. What you probably can do when you go home or when you finish this event is Google Space Law UK. And you will now see a large number of law firms developing space law, and they've coined it into maritime and also international law and air law. But it's everything. It's a big, big industry, and we just don't have enough. We don't have enough colleagues in space lawyers. But the European Agency, European Space Agency, the likes of NASA, you'll see them play more. They have the technology advancements, and as part of being part of the European Union, they get a lot of funding. But we can say the likes of JAXA, Rosmacos, etc., all bringing up and getting these advancements. So the OST, and I'm just going to flick through a few of these and get to the more juicy parts. But Article 5 provides the flexibility for planet Earth. It provides the future, but it's not the only one. The key provisions of this is states are responsible for what they put up. Therefore, if the UK launches a rocket into space and launches a satellite into space, that satellite remains responsibility of UK. Doesn't matter if Elon Musk's, doesn't matter Jeff Bezos, it's irrelevant. It's the UK. That's it. But then we have an issue with the likes of failed states. So the Soviet Union has got objects still up in space. Now we can't touch that because there is no more Soviet Union anymore. So we have defunct satellites, which are classed as space objects, going around planet Earth, and it's no one's. But we have no legal recourse to remove them. We can't just jump up. We can't just get something to bring it down because it's not within our power. We'll get onto that in a few different slides. But we did not understand this at the time that OST was there. But we built some sneaky mechanisms in. And this is where academics can then build hypotheses and then try and develop them. They might not be legally binding, but we need to keep the question going. Criticisms, as I've already said, so it's a lack of gaps. And as lawyers, we hate gaps. If you have a contract law scenario, you want to know A, B, C, and D. You don't want to know, well, maybe you can. I'm not sure about this. Because then how could you pass? And international law provides a number of answers. But we don't know if we're right because we have no litigation to back us up. And if we have no litigation to back us up, we can't reference legislation, we can't reference academics, we can't reference judge-made law, we can't do anything. So academics like me, when we're looking at space, we look at a question and we try our best to answer it. Am I right? Probably not. But that's the fun about international law. You don't have to be right to build a concept. You can be completely wrong in a different avenue. And that's the fun of it. The growing economy of that, obviously, the Outer Space Treaty, it's grown. It's developing continuously. We see this every single day, that the OST has provided the commercialization aspect of outer space. In the UK, last year, it was around about 19 billion. In the European Space Agency as a whole, I believe it was around about 290 to 350 billion. America spends the same, but all the stats are online that you can see that. This is a massive, massive market. The Insurance Space Agency, you need insurance to send something up to space. You don't put it on compare websites. Go compare on Market Meerkat or whatever it is, will not give you a space update. You need a special broker. You need a lawyer. You need insurance. You need everything along the lines of that. The foundation of the treaty is there. It is written in a way that it's non-restrictive. So there is no mechanism to hold you account. So if you don't follow Article 5, Article 1, Article 3, Article 6, Article 9, okay, you didn't follow it. That's fine. You don't get sent to jail. You don't get taken in front of the international courts. You don't get taken in the United Nations. You don't get your legs smacked. You don't get nothing. But the geopolitical element of the Outer Space Treaty is very stringent. If you do something in international law, you have the potential condemnation of geopolitics. And we'll not touch upon too much of that because that goes down a rabbit hole. But geopolitics is the politics of outer space. Why would Russia not want you doing something? Why would China? Why would America? Why would the UK? Why would France? All of the spacefaring nations don't want you to do certain things. For example, ASAT testing. And this happened a few years with China. Chinese launched a rocket up into space to blow one of their objects up, one of their space satellites. That's fine. But the OST dictates you cannot do that. What happened? Did they get sued? Did they get sent to prison? Nothing. There was global condemnation. America said, no, you should not do that. And we all know that what America says to China is just like water off a duck's back. It happens. But then all of them little bits of space debris goes around, and as a result of that, the International Space Station had to move. There's people living up there. They could have died. And these are kind of the issues that we need to consider. And this is where my element of research comes in. So generally, I consider the soft law, the international customary law, the state declarations or the principles that each state does. So if the UK for the next 500 years states that we will send rockets up like this, and when we bring it down, we will bring all of our dirt down. Space academics go around and say, right, okay, well, the UK has done that for 500 years, therefore, it must be law in the UK. So then 501 years, the UK doesn't, there'll be something called judicial review. There'll be a challenge on the government to uphold the correct laws of the country. Yes, they'll just legislate out of it, but that's another thing. But the involvement in international nations and international states and the agencies that all form this, develop this. The likes of COSPAR says, if you go up into space, you must follow, if you follow this, this is the best practice. This will help our pristine environment and benefit for all mankind, all humanity. And these are the kinds of things that constantly take turn. So we don't have the black and white law. You should not do this or you get sent to prison. International space prison, let's coin that phrase. I think that would be a fantastic prison to go to. I might even go to prison in space. That'll be fun. But we define these laws and we use these. We look at literature. So I think I always get this wrong. It's either section 36 or 38 of the International Court of Justice. It considers what law is and what international law is. And it has 4 kinds. It has soft law, it has principles, it has declarations and so on, but it also considers academic work. So my journal articles, it'll not, but it will. So it looks at what literature has been brought out by academics. And it considers that if there's a large factor, and if the academic is not senior, then we should consider it. And it could be made into a persuasive argument. And if it's made into a persuasive argument, then the courts would listen, the international courts would listen. But we've not got to that level yet, because everything's been done under that. The hybrid approach to space governance, again, is the non-binding agreements, the international agencies, so what is put out in declarations and understandings and rules to follow and why it should be followed. Domestic actors, again, the likes of SpaceX, all the way along the lines of that, and collective and collaborative governance. So the European Space Agency, for all of the benefit of the European Union. Completely different, but it forms that agency. So we have multiple states agreeing to laws that's set by an agency. And that's how we form the law. That's the best practice. But is it binding? No. Because as we know, state sovereignty is most important. And every state is sovereign and therefore can do what they like, when they like, how they like, and why they like. But it's the best practice to keep the pristine area pristine, and how we develop that. The concept under Article 9 is ideal, and it shows that space element. It shows why we have an environment in space. And when we think of environment, we think of grass and trees and courtyards and oxygen and land and fish and seas and lakes and birds frolicking in the trees and etc. But space is an environment. And we try to understand that in the concept of international law. So as a foundation, When I think of space, I think no sovereignty, no one owns it, open, vast, unlivable. Agreed? Yeah? So just like Antarctica. And Antarctica has rules and laws. That's agreed by all of international law. Just like the sea. Oh, well, we have law of the seas and we have maritime law. Fantastic. We're starting to get somewhere. And it's an environment by classification. So international environmental law must apply. Oh, well, fantastic. So we have a foundation that we can build on the foundations of the OST and the other articles. The difficulty for me is that I've then got to learn maritime law, law of the seas, international environmental law, international geopolitics, and generally international public law, which is all fun because it's a lot of reading. And I'm a nerd, so that's the best thing about it. But we develop these because they're vague. So how do we understand how we can include environmental law into space that has an environment but you can't breathe? And this is where my work comes into it. I challenge the perceptions of outer space by using international law and saying, well, this is a kind of an area of the same thing. We can't live in Antarctica because it has no sovereignty. So automatically, there's no sovereignty in space. We can assume that. We can say that's a clear. Yes, there is flags on the moon, but we'll just leave that aside because it gets a little bit more complicated and we don't have time for that this evening. But how do we do that and how do we apply? Can we use UNCLOS for law of the seas and develop how we do that for special environments? Yes, 100%. And that's what I generally do. The vagueness of the OST allows that. So imagine you can see the OST says on the board, this must follow this, this, and this. That's it. It's finished. I wouldn't be giving this presentation now because I can't create any more. But because of its vague elements, we can use, we can develop, and we can have some fun while doing it. Human rights in space. Humans can't live in space yet. But why shouldn't they have human rights? It's a concept. It is a concept. The development of the environmental degradation, so again through junk, planetary protection, and precautionary principle, is already an aspect. I've done a number of articles on these alone, and my PhD was looking at the planetary protection and how do we develop that. And that's not just for planet Earth. That is for out there and going forward. So planetary protection, the principles are as such, really focus on backwards and forwards contamination. So forward contamination, what do we send out into the cosmos, into the solar system? Is it clean? Potentially. It goes through a clean room, but it's not 100% clean. Is it going to, for example, if we crash a satellite on Mars, will it destroy something? Not just the ecosystem, not just the planet, sorry, but potentially tardigrades, potentially life that we don't know because we literally can't go up there. Will some oil destroy it? Potentially. Backwards contamination, things coming back to planet Earth. And this is where, since COVID, the pandemic, it gets a little bit crazy because we don't know what's out there. What if we bring something back to planet Earth that doesn't like oxygen? What if a tardigrade that we pick up on Mars from the Mars return mission in around about 9 years comes back to planet Earth and decides that it eats oxygen? It eats all oxygen, we die. Is that too far right? Potentially. Please don't go home and have nightmares or make complaints. We're not going to die through tardigrades. But these are kind of things that backwards and forwards contamination through planetary protection considers. And it happens. We can see the likes of the quarantine confinements in Australia. That's what planetary protection is. It's how we protect our planet, but also protect life on different planets, whether they're asteroids, whether that's moons, icy planets, etc. So we get back to space debris. So as we can imagine, We have Sandra Bullock up in space. George Clooney, I think, was there as well. And we have multiple elements of space debris going around and around and around. We've lost our satellites. We've lost our phones. We've lost our internet connections. Starlink's down. We can't go to the shops because we forgot how to get there. Our Tesla models, oh, Tom's got a Tesla. His car's knackered. It's finished. He's still got electric, but the auto elements are driving him up to Spain. Don't know how he's getting to Spain, but he can't open the doors because it's driving at 70 miles an hour. So he's got to wait for his battery to run out. All of these elements are coming from there. AI is finished because we don't have any connection. So what are we going to do? Are we going to go back to the Stone Ages? I like my comforts. I like my Netflix. I like the screens. I like the computers. And these are the defining elements of space debris. And we haven't got to that stage yet, but we are there. We are just one event from losing everything. If you have a look on NASA's website, you will see that the ISS moved more last year than ever before. It had to reposition itself because it didn't want to get hit. There's astronauts up in space continuously. And as I said before, we have the failed states. We have certain satellites that are nuclear. Now remember that OST was developed so that there would be no nuclear war in space. We have satellites with nuclear. We can't bring them down because some of them are Soviets. And to bring down another state is against international law, even if it's a failed state. We have American satellites that are up in space. Why don't America bring it down? Because it costs a lot of money. Where will we crash it? Who wants to bring a nuclear satellite down to planet Earth and crash it in the Nemo point in North America? Big splash. But also, what if it explodes? So it's easier just to push it out further and further and further and further. It may crash on Mars. There's nothing living on Mars. Might crash in an asteroid. Yeah, it could do. What if Mars explodes? Yeah, it's ages away. But what if the planet comes hurtling to planet Earth? What if it hits the ecosystem and completely devastates planet Earth? And these are the elements, these are the fun elements. I know it seems a bit apocalypsy, and I didn't want to really take it to there, but these are the elements and the defining approaches where we look at space debris and we say, what are the possibilities? How do we get them to nothing? How do we bring the junk down and pop it neatly in the bin, just like planet Earth? But have we aced it on planet Earth? We can't deal with climate change. We have no international consensus on climate change. Litter. I still say litter outside. Broken cars, batteries, oil, nuclear waste. We cannot get a consensus internationally or just in the UK on environmental degradation and management. And if we can't do it ourselves, what's the chances of doing it in space? And I want you to think of that. I want you to keep that in your mind. As I've said, the states that launch it up remain responsible. So because the Soviets sent that satellite up, which becomes an object as per the Outer Space Treaty, they remain responsible forever. There's no Soviet Union anymore. It's dead. It's finished. It's kaput. It can't be transferred. There is no mechanism for the UK to say, well, we'll take all of them over and then we'll start to bring them down. That would be common sense. But internationally, Russia would say, no, 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 no. China, no, you can't. The law says this. And the UK couldn't because it's too costly. How do we do it safely? How do we get it down? Then what do we do with it? And it's just not on the cards as of yet. Article 3. Now this is my baby. This is my go-to article of the Outer Space Treaty. I absolutely adore it. I love it. It considers the international development of what space is, but it factors in international law. So you know when I was saying about law of the seas, maritime law, international environmental law, international public law, state responsibility, international criminal law, international human rights, anything to do with international law, theoretically, can be applied to space under Article 3. Anything at all. And that's why Article 3 is so powerful. In essence, it allows any development. So if we said we must do this a certain way in international public law and it must follow this law, academics like myself, states, politicians could say we need to apply this to outer space. The problem is it doesn't happen like that. So it's up to academics, it's up to students, it's up to professionals and industries to make these arguments. And if one person listens, we change. 2, 3, 4, 5 states, interdisciplinary agencies, and it grows. And it really does develop. And we've seen this over the last 10 years. The European Space Agency, the UK Space Agency, NASA, JAXA, all of the space agencies now generally try to follow the same route. And no one has ever, apart from my colleague Karen, has got Russia, China, America, the UK to agree. And yet they follow various different routes. And that's because we have an agency such as COSPAR, which is not state-defined, it has no allegiance, and it sits with the best experts, and they say this is the best route to go. That's it. And this is how we develop into space. Forget the allegiance, develop on what we need. Again, it's for all of our benefit. It's for all of humanity. It's not just for Elon Musk. It's not for Jeff. It's for everyone. And that's why we can make these arguments. International cooperation. So again, we have the geopolitical nightmare. We have the Security Council and the United Nations, which has been stagnant since Kofi Annan was the president, and he said, there is no point having any laws. Laws will not be created because the Security Council is stagnant. And that's been around about 10, 15 years now. But what about astropolitics? Well, it's in space, so why shouldn't it have its own politics? I vote to be the president. I would like to be the president of space. I think that would be quite a cool job. I don't know how I'd go up there, but that's a different element. And again, academics, some colleagues of mine, have started to bridge into astropolitics, into understanding the politics and the geopolitical nature of international law on Earth, and how we can transcend that into space. How do we develop a space political structure? Do we have a president? Do we have a king? Do we have a queen? Do we have a duck? We don't know. And this is the hypothesis that we can generally extend up into space. And again, one of my colleagues, Bledden, who's at Durham now, he does a lot of astropolitics. He writes a lot of books, so if you want any recommendations, I'm happy to give them. So in conclusion, before we get on to questions and answers, the OST plays a critical advice. And it seems like I've just stabbed it for however long we've just been going and said that, well, it doesn't have any laws, there's no dispute mechanisms, there's no, I'm going to take you to space jail. There's nothing. And it does feel like the Outer Space Treaty gets a good hammer and once in a while from a good academic. But it provides the foundations. And if we didn't have it, where would we be? We would have nothing. Will it get redone? No. My legal opinion, it will never get rewritten. It will never get re-signed. It has 197 signatories. And geopolitics will never, ever let that happen again. Because why would China, Russia, America, the UK, the European Space Agency, Japan get into a room and agree on anything? We will all be living under the sea due to climate change, and we can't get a consensus. So if that's going to happen, what's the chance of space law? Space activities are going to carry on being involved. Elon Musk, Starlink, satellites, communications, it's a lucrative business. It has lawyers, it has finance, it has politicians, it has industry, it has mechanics, it has scientists. It is a massive, massive industry. And it's developing. It's only going to increase. Everything we have that we love has been developed from or for the uses of space. TomTom. I remember when I started to put it in the window. Now it's integrated in every single car. And we just use it. I know when I lose signal, when I'm going down a ditch or down a lane, I sit there and go, I don't have a map in the car. What am I going to do? And I drive and I look for someone on the road. But we've gotten used to it now. We've developed it. We understand it. And I certainly could never go back to reading a map because I'm useless. The hybrid approach to combining international cooperation, collaboration into a flexible framework works. Having the likes of the agencies, the European Space Agencies, NASA, JAXA, etc., working with international departments such as COSPAR, and the likes of universities, we all play into this game. We have a rising number of solicitors, politicians, healthcare workers, everyone who's interested in space gets together. We talk, mechanics, scientists, lawyers, all in a room. It sounds like a joke, but it's not. We all go to the bar together, and that's certainly not a joke. But it's developing this conversation, these connections, into building something for the next generation. And how we get you to do the same. And it's a real passion. Environmental degradation is not a joke. The more we send up to space, we don't bring enough down. It's not put one up, take one down. We just don't, because it's too expensive. So we put up, and 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 put up. And it's continuously. And it will get to a stage, maybe not in our lifetime, maybe in our kids, 100 years, 500 years, lifetime, to where we can't get access to space. And then we're landlocked. We're literally stuck on planet Earth. Rising tides, can't get to space. Asteroids, can't get to space. Martians, can't get to space. We're stuck. And this is what I want you to take away. To understand that political tensions devise space. They create everything to do with space. But the tides are changing. They're changing. We have private actors in space doing more things than the states. They have the money. States don't have the money anymore. The private actors are developing stuff, whether that's rightly or wrongly. I think we have a number of lunatics doing stuff in space. But if you're watching, I would like to go to space. I can't not say that. And it's how we develop the law, political tension, education, space, science, and how we develop that. Thank you very much for listening to us, and I will now take questions. I'll pass over to Tom.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
Scott, while I find the roving mic, I think we've reached a midpoint of being inspired, informed, and terrified.
Yeah.
Perhaps if I can start with a convoluted question with an easy answer. Maybe one about international law. So you're saying the Outer Space Treaty, and a lot of this seems to have its roots in the UN and sort of a global body of people coming together with a set of agreements. not all states are members.
Yeah.
And then you've talked at the end there about some private sort of entities doing their own thing, going rogue. Is there anything stopping private entities joining forces with non-UN member states and completely throwing this up in the air? What are your kind of reflections in that territory before we open to the floor?
So, I mean, theoretically, it could happen. The OST allows that anything that is launched from a state is the ownership of that state. So if the UK launches something, it's the UK's responsibility. If South Korea launches something, it's the South Korean responsibility. So the only thing that really could stop that is the positioning of the states. So we know in the UK it's a lot harder to launch something into space than it is to America, because just the way it sits, the axis sits to the Earth, it's easier. And if you think a straight line directly to the orbit is key. If we look at the smaller states, to the ones that are not going to do anything, we have financial issues, we have geopolitical issues, but we also have that it's just on the wrong axis. And this is why we find the European Space Agency focuses on some kind of space flight, but they launch a lot of satellites, microsatellites, miniature satellites, microsatellites, CubeSats, etc., because that's a lot easier to get up from the European Peninsula and also the UK than sending a rocket up for space flight. And that's why predominantly we've always seen US and Russia being the people that send them space elements up.
So it can sleep easy for a period of time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I want to go straight open to the floor, so I'll pass the mic around just for those joining us online, if that's okay.
And if a company launches from international waters, say 300 miles to the east of Florida?
Good question. So theoretically, it would be to where the company was based. So if SpaceX, and I mean SpaceX has been trying that when obviously they've been bringing the rockets backwards and forwards, they've went into elements of international water, but because they are a US entity, the US would still claim sovereignty over that. But as per the first question, if we had a rogue state or a pirate, we could say we could classify someone in international waters as a pirate, and they have no state sovereignty. We would probably try and, as academics and lawyers, we would probably try and trace them back to where they originated from. But if that wasn't the case, then theoretically no state would take ownership. And we would have piracy in outer space, which I think is pretty much one of my articles that I'm going to write in the future. But yeah, it's a really good question. It's really good to see the international elements, the no sovereignty in national water. But again, that's what's in space. It will get to the stage that when we're launching stuff in space, there's no sovereignty up there. So we would have to develop and say, well, SpaceX did this, so America's responsible for it. But what happens when the expanse comes around? And we effectively have people living in space for generations. And in that situation, if they come from space and they launch in space, we have international piracy in space, which I just think is fantastic. But yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Are there any online, Ness, before I continue? No. Any follow-up questions? The point also that you alluded to earlier is around sort of colonisation of other planets, etc. Am I right in understanding that the international law or national law of the country responsible for colonising that planet would then stand on another planet under the current system? Or is there...
It gets tricky.
Could there be an Elon Musk governance structure on another planet?
No. It simply wouldn't have that. So again, it goes back to the key principles of outer space law, that no one can claim sovereignty of outer space. So even if Elon Musk did the impossible and technologically advanced, we're just not there. We're simply not there. If he colonised Mars by putting 2 warheads at the North and South Pole and creating an atmosphere and putting H2O and water and plant life and everything like that and building that up, he couldn't become Lord Supreme Chancellor of Mars. Effectively, forgetting about all of the international law that he's just breached, it would be for the benefit of mankind. Whether the fact is that we could go and live up there is another question, because We couldn't, because we're not millionaires and billionaires and probably trillionaires by that point. But it could be populated, it could be used, but some kind of international governance system would have to be in there. So we pretty much could see another international United Nations or something along the lines of that governing them single planets. But I don't think we'll have a dictatorship in space to where we have a king of that planet, because I think that would just be, again, anarchy. I don't think it's within the political view, but it could happen.
It's certainly during turbulent times, who knows? And if I may indulge my I'll go off on a rail trail now, but what if extraterrestrial life is discovered, and what does that do for international law, as you've just explained?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so again, when we think about extraterrestrial life and aliens, we think of them green men and everything that we see on X-Files or Star Wars or Star Trek or anything like that. But predominantly, scientists and academics don't consider that as of yet. So wherever there's water, there's generally life. Mars had water. There's potentially undersurface water. We have the likes of Europa and the icy moons that have water. So it's not when, it's not if, it's when. Because it's there. We just can't get there and see what it is and see what kind of life it is. But there are going to be microorganisms in there. There are going to be tardigrades in there. Some of them are just going to be the start of life, to where humanity came from. But then we can develop and see what are the origins of life. How did life start? We've all been told that we were either monkeys or fish, and we've crawled from the ocean and grew legs and created societies and civilizations and then war and etc. But we've not seen it. And that's sort of the curiosity of astrobiology, and that's what it focuses on. What is out there and how it's developed. And like I say, wherever there's water, there's there. And that's why we're looking at Mars, and that's why we're looking at the likes of Enceladus and Europa and all of them icy planets that are out there, to see what is there, how it lives, how it is alive, and what it could be. But yes, hopefully we will meet them little green men and them aliens with big spaceships from a different galaxy to save us from our climate change disaster.
I'm not going to speak as some of the people I've come across this last week. A final question, if there's no more in the room. When do you think we'll start to see the first, you talked of more practices specialising in this, but when will we start to see the first cases coming through courts? When will that precedent start to be set through legal challenge? So
it already has, but it forms a lot of contract law. It forms a lot of business law. So cases where breach of contract have happened, or finance issues. And we've basically just started the business-to-business elements. Lawyers are doing it on a day-to-day basis as commercial applications. We see that they generally have the specialisms, and a lot of my colleagues who are doing this are doing sort of the maritime law, the shipping law, the air law, and the space law, because it all coins in together. And this is what my hypothesis build upon. How we can use that, and solicitors have coined onto that, because it's all exactly the same area, especially in my opinion. And we've seen these commercial entities grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And obviously I'm not mentioning the law firms, but Google will tell you that. It'll get to the stage where obviously international politics comes into it, but it's a stagnant European Union. It's United Nations. And it has been, and it's really trying to build them relationships between companies. But as we know, money speaks. And that's how Elon Musk is doing so much in so little time and advancing at a rapid speed. So is Jeff Bezos. And we see these above the states, whereas originally NASA sent it up, funded by the United Nations. We now have individuals sending rockets up under the supervision of the state, limited, all funded by individuals. And that's never happened. We are waiting for litigation. We're waiting for Starlink or a rocket to land on Canada or anything. But like you say, they have it in international waters. They do that for that reason. Because if they crash in international waters, so if they crash in America and hit someone in the head, or for example, one of the Starlinks fall down on a primary school and kill everyone inside, then we have a litigation issue. But so far, we're just not up to that stage. It will happen. I might not see it in my lifetime. But unfortunately, we're waiting for that litigation, waiting for that tragedy, for the law to go. We must react, have some kind of international outcry, as we normally do, and then solve the situation, solve the problem.
Excellent. Thank you. Final chance for any questions in the room? Thank you so... Yeah, please, yeah. Go on, please.
So if I hack into a satellite of the Soviets, which is a failed state, would I be committing any crime or could it be punished anywhere?
International war crime. Yes.
There's always a catch.
Yeah. So theoretically, you would fall under the law of the state first. So you would most likely get arrested in the UK. You would get arrested by the police. Obviously, you'd have to prove that. You would get probably CIA, MI5, FBI would want all to speak to you within the UK, which would probably be fun, but in a different situation. And depending on what you did, if you crashed on something in a different state, you would potentially be taken to the Hague for an international war crime, depending on what you did, what was the mass size of it. If you hacked into it and moved it a centimetre to the left, you'd probably get done for espionage or something along the lines of that, which I've never really considered until now. So that's a really good question. I might need to write that down. I'll give you credit in an article. But yeah, I mean, it obviously, if you crashed into a state or you killed multiple people or mass genocide, then you could probably get taken to the Hague for an international war crime. But more than likely, you probably just get arrested and charged probably under the Espionage Act or some kind of something that the CPS would charge you with if it was in the UK. But no, that's a really good question. Thank you very much.
But I think we're saying don't.
Yeah, don't.
I mean,
don't.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry.
Is he going to be sent to like international, not international, but like a space prison or something, or to just?
I think that's in the future, but you probably just get taken to the Hague. But again,
That would be an international space pirate.
I think join the Space Pirates. Yeah, I'm sure there's a cartoon of Space Pirates.
I think so.
Finally, thank you ever so much, Scott. If we could show our appreciation one final time. Please do keep an eye on the ARU events page for future events. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and we wish you a very pleasant rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.